What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Timeout with Sco. I'm here with a very special guest, Coach Steve Hodge. He is the current coach at Pacifica Christian High School. He has been an assistant at Campbell Hall High School as well. He owned a company called Breakthrough Sports that we're going to talk about a little bit here shortly. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. I like the intro.
Right.
Well done.
Take two, we got it down.
Absolutely.
But I want to jump right in. We talked a little bit off camera about Breakthrough Sports, and I'm really interested in learning more about it. We have a lot of coaches come on here, and we talk a lot about the coaching side, and I think there's extreme value in that. But I want to learn more about your business, kind of how you started it, what the idea and the concept was behind it, and how you grew it to be so successful.
Yeah, well, a partner and I met with the Clippers youth department years ago, almost 10 years ago to be exact. And he came on as the head of the department, so to speak, and I was his lead coach. So together we were able to put together some camps, academy ideas, a Littles program. And I guess from there we recognized that, we didn't see any room for growth within that company. So we jumped off and did our own thing. And, we wanted to do Breakthrough basketball originally, but I'm grateful to my partner at the time who was like, hey, man, if we expand to sports, if we can do this, we can do all sports. And that will yield more for us financially, and it will cover a wider base. So we jumped off and we started doing basketball camps. Next thing you know, within 3-4 years, we're talking basketball, football, soccer leagues, alongside academies and other things as well, homeschool, PE courses. So we really took off. But the whole idea was to leave an imprint regarding ages 3 to 13, which is the premier demo for kids. Once you get to high school, coaches get a hold of them. It's a whole different world, becomes more competitive. So our idea was to get ages 3 through 13 and teach the sport, keep the fundamentals of real active idea.
So you started this in LA.
Yes.
And what areas were you kind of servicing and working with closely?
Anywhere somebody was willing to sign a contract with us. I think we were sharp enough. We were sharp enough to recognize that through the Clippers program, we recognized that cities were in need of help. And what that means is that we always assume that there's parks and rec, or recs and park, however they say it, out here, as well as like CYOs, as well as, like Jewish community centers and all of those different things. They have their own situations sports-wise, but they also don't have fantastic coaches because a lot of coaches are volunteer coaches or dads or moms and so on and such. So we figured that we can come in and start pitching sports and different other ideology to certain cities, and they were receptive, thank God, super receptive. So we were able to move. We ended up, when it was all said and done, Orange County, all the way as far as to Camarillo, where we were doing homeschools. So that's a pretty big reach, Orange County to Ventura County.
And you started, that's actually so cool. So you basically went to these local park and recs in the area and essentially pitched your idea about running these camps and these events that could work with kids from 3 to 13 to essentially help develop their skills.
Yes.
If I were to come to one of these events, what would it look like?
It would look like everything had a template. It's a great question. Everything had a template, from your intro, of course, your static dynamics, whatever 3 drills you're doing, that we would teach our coaches, your 3 drills, and maybe a scrimmage. And that was what it looks like for our academies, which we did really well with. But for the most part, that was our skeleton for most of the things we did. But what we really, really dug deep into was the personality part of it. We recognized early that our premier demo was going to be kids who weren't the AAU and club stars. We were going to get the kids whose families were like, hey, we've been doing these city leagues and these city events, and eventually it gets stripped and the kids move on to club, baseball, basketball, soccer, football, whatever it is. They move on to something greater. But what about my son? What about my daughter? What can we do? What can you guys do? And we're like, well, no, we're here. We got you covered. So we were actually the other people inside of the city. And many times, interesting enough, we were more popular than what the city had to offer. Understandably so, because the family, the city can only do so much.
Sure.
They can only find a certain amount of coaches, as we talked off air, but trying to find reliable coaches. So what we offered was the idea of bringing in a polished company feel to the city, in addition to whatever they had. And what we found as well was that many cities had an overflow of families that were interested. Some kids not skilled enough or even old enough. So we just slid right into the gaps where they didn't have, and that's why they loved us. Like, whatever you don't provide, we'll provide. So many a times we'd ask them, like, hey, you already got a basketball league? Great. You already have a soccer league? Great. What do you need? Well, actually, we need a program for ages 3, 4, and 5. We got that for you. Actually, we only need, we do need a basketball academy and a volleyball academy. Could you guys do that on Sunday? Let's do that. So we stood in the gap and then expanded quickly.
I love that you mentioned the population that you worked with, because a lot of times for coaches or for trainers, we always want to work with the most elite talent, right? And those are always the hardest kids, the hardest programs to build and obtain. And so when did you know that was your niche? And when did you decide, like, it's okay if I don't work with the kid that's playing on the circuit, but I know that I can add value and help here at this level?
Yeah. I think there's multiple tiers or layers in the answer. I've been coaching since I was 13. So I had a summer job when I was 13 in Hartford, Connecticut, and I remember it being a basketball camp. And I'm 13, these kids might be 6, 7, 8 years old, and I had no problem with it. I loved it, and I excelled at it. Even to when I was, playing internationally, I didn't play high-level FIBA basketball like some people like to project and lie about. I was playing low-level, Division II, sometimes Division III, the lower levels of those countries. And a part of your job most of the time is to be a coach on the side, which might pay you an additional 25, 30 bucks, or whatever it is. And I excelled at that as well, because a lot of those kids weren't very good. And I just continued while I was here, having the personality to do so, having the skill set to do so. I trained just like everyone else. I've had, multiple clients, and I thought I wanted to be a player development guy and maybe take it to the pro level. And I realized really quickly that LA is a different beast regarding training. That ain't something that took off on the East Coast until recently. That's not something we did. We were hoopers. We played. We found gyms, we found parks, and we played. The idea of a personal trainer to us sounded crazy. We didn't know what that was. So we were on our own merit to figure it out. So once I got here, that niche, it was, I think once I got to the Clippers, that's when I realized, I'm like, oh, these kids aren't very good. They're not very good, and they're, the name of the brand is big. So it's going to have a big draw. But with this draw, there's still regular families dropping off their kid who was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and it's probably not that good. And once I recognized how valuable fundamentals were, and how valuable a kind, honest coach is, that's not selling your next level and just selling, let's just be good at the jump stop. Let's be good at the reverse pivot. That's when I realized, that's my niche. In addition to the fact that that market is wide open financially speaking, monetarily, because everybody's chasing the best players and putting them on. I coach this person and that person. Well, you did, but you didn't make them that good. You know what I mean? And where we're from, the integrity of the game is it's always tell your truth. If you're assisting with someone or you're training them, great, but that doesn't make you the creator of said person. And what I did learn while hiring and firing, both with the Clippers and with Breakthrough, is that there are a lot, matter of fact, an overwhelming number of coaches, trainers that don't know how to actually coach or teach. They know how to do what the training, the model is. And when you get a 5-year-old kid that knows nothing, I'm like, you have no idea what to do here. Got it. I said, this kid's not going to make a layup because they don't know what it is, friend. They're not going to stop traveling because they don't know what a jump stop is, sir. So how do you teach that? Well, you got to just take the ball and get, no. You have to illustrate it for a child. You've got to jump stop through your heels, right? And when you teach a pivot, you're going to teach them, hey, you're going to squish a buck. Stuff like that are, that illustrates and sticks in their mind. And that's when I realized I can do this while also coaching college or middle school or high school. Like I have that range. So financially speaking, that group benefited my family the best.
There's so many things that you mentioned there that I'm like, you're speaking my language. Because obviously I'm from LA. I've been, born and raised here and grew up here. And so I'm more familiar with the culture and of training and what that, looks like. And I'm in the scene, right? I'm in the industry. And so I'm competing with a lot of the guys or women that you mentioned as well. And I think the true test and measure if somebody can actually train is, can you take somebody that doesn't know this at all and teach them that? And I think there's nothing more important in the game than youth coaches, because
Absolutely.
they're really teaching the game. They're really teaching the pivots, the footwork, right? The fundamentals, how to pound the ball, just where the ball should be on your fingertips and all of that stuff. And I think so many times we overlook that as trainers, right? We look at, oh, well, he's working with this person, so that means that he must be qualified, right? Or he's valid, or he's whatever, cool word the kids use in regard to, their skill to develop players.
Yeah.
And I think, to your point, so often there is this big space, right? There's this big opportunity for business growth,
Right.
but also teaching too. And so that leads me to asking you, like, for your program, how important was it for you to teach off-court values and skills as well, knowing that the talent level of the kids may not be as high, and so the opportunity for them to play at a professional level may not be the same, but knowing that there's still value in playing sports, being a part of a team? How did you implement that within your business and, teach that within the coaches that you had working with you?
I think you have to be it. It sounds crazy, but you have to be it. I'm grateful for the fact that I was able to take the game as far as I was able to take it, or until it dropped me off, as I like to say. The game will eventually drop everybody off at their stop, at their respective stop. And when the game was done with me, I was always unafraid of truth. And I think if you lead with truth, you'll weed out certain families and certain kids. So for me, with that particular program, Breakthrough, and whatever, wherever I'm coaching, I don't have a problem telling the truth because I didn't make it. It just is. And the truth is, one out of a million will be an NBA pro. Maybe 3 out of X amount of thousands will be an international pro. So the truth is, if you're dealing with families and you're dealing with children, just like the same way in my house that I don't teach Santa Claus and I don't teach the fairy, the fairy, tooth fairy and stuff like that. We celebrate these things, but there's no fat white dude jumping down my chimney, you know what I mean? And there's nobody coming and whispering away your teeth. No, we're going to celebrate your development. But guess what? A lot of y'all ain't going to the pros. And I'm talking to the parents and the kids. But if you're going to play this game and spend X amount of hours in the gym, let's go ahead and work on your fundamentals and get you truly better so you can enjoy the game. Because if you improve your skill and you really truly develop, outside the court and inside the court, the manifestation of that is a beautiful journey, even with the ankles and the MCL sprains, which teach you life as well.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think it embodies, I think the truth embodies everything. If you give the truth, and you teach the truth, at the end of the day, whatever manifests is what manifests. A really good basketball team that might have a great player that might go to play in college, whatever, or maybe a couple kids that are right on the line. If you really work with their games and you really truly show them how it works, I think the manifestation, it will just be whatever it's going to be. Him going to school or him going wherever, or it's going to be what it's going to be. So teach the truth rather than walking in with a lie. I can get you here. I can get you there. Lies. It's all lies. It's not the truth. That's how I do it. I'm unafraid of the truth.
I'm on the same page as you. I think, and the other thing you mentioned, being a former player, having injuries myself, those injuries do teach you a lot of things outside of the game. And although, like, my injuries that I had probably changed my trajectory, it taught me so much about life. I learned so much about what discipline really looked like, what, you know, going through something hard and being able to see the other side of that.
Yeah.
And so for you, what's been as a player, what was the biggest thing for you that you learned on your journey that you sort of take with you and instill now?
I learned it late. I didn't learn it during. I learned it late. The process is so cliche. The process, the journey, the road is way more valuable than the end result. We're always thinking about, how can I make the varsity? How can I start varsity? How can I score more points? How can I become the leading assist guy and whatever, get my name in the paper or get my name online? All right, how can I get to a school? How can I get in that rotation? All right, how can I get good game film? How can I get overseas? How can I find an agent? How can I find a camp to go to sell myself? Ooh, I made it this far now. How can I get some minutes? How can I get some really, really good film so I can go on to another team to make more money? It's always a means to an end. But the truth is that journey taught me exactly what you just said. How to get up, how to handle your business, how to make strong choices which ultimately empower your decisions. You know what I mean? How to walk away from the crowd, how to be okay with being laughed at, how to be okay with rejection, how to be okay with hearing no, how to be okay with this doesn't work for me, how to be okay with that person's better than me, how to be okay with feedback from a coach, how to be okay with this is my role. All of those things ultimately made me who I am. And this is another reason, you know what I mean, that I believe that the power of sport, you know what I mean, we're talking specifically about basketball, but the power of sport is so spiritually monstrous, you know what I mean? And whether it's a sport or, my daughter danced for a while and I'm trying to get her back into it. But when you live and die by something, you wake up thinking and dreaming about something and you dedicate your time and you find community and you meet people, ultimately it grows you. Ultimately, it shows you your flaws, and ultimately, it makes you a better person. But to answer your question, I learned after I was done that the journey was way greater than a destination.
I think that's so important. I think so many times parents have this ideation or
Sure.
visualization of what their kid should be or what they want their kid to be. And I think a lot of times they don't realize that even if your kid doesn't amount to being a professional player, the things that they're going to take with them along the way, that's the important stuff. And I think a lot of times within youth, there's some of that missing.
Some? Huh.
I'm being nice. But there's some of that missing. And I think a lot of times, to your point earlier, being truthful with parents sometimes actually pushes them out of the door.
Right. And
so for good coaches, they're okay with that. But for coaches that are in it for personal reasons, that doesn't always happen. And so I say that to say I really respect that you created something that is one for the kids.
Yeah.
But also too, is being honest and is setting them up. Right? Not everything that we do in life we're going to succeed at, we're going to win at, right? And too many times you see parents take away that failure from their kids, right? They'll either pull them or they'll, they go and talk to the coach about it.
Let them preach, sister. Preach.
But at the end of the day, those experiences are actually the ones that kids need. And so talk a little bit about that. Obviously, you're a coach now. You've run your own company. You've worked with hundreds of kids. Talk about how you sort of implement that within your coaching and just what that looks like for you with your players, your parents, those sorts of conversations that you have with them.
Once again, I lead with truth and I try to be honest. It shouldn't be something that you try to do or something. It should be something that you lean into naturally. I'll start with the fact that there was a moment with my father, who was an outstanding man. He hooped as well. He was tough. There was a moment, I've only did it one time, that I went to him about a coach. I might have been a senior in high school, struggling through injuries, wrist then elbow junior and senior year, trying to get some exposure, trying to get some accolades so I can go to the next level. But I didn't feel like I was getting a fair shot. And that's why I went to him. And he took me through a series of questions that ultimately led to a self-reflection, as my father does. That's what a good pops does. And ultimately, he was like, I don't talk to coaches. If you weren't disrespected and you weren't harmed, I have nothing to say to the coach. It's your responsibility to be who you're supposed to be, or be what this, what your team needs you to be. I can't help you. This is a personal thing. And he didn't even stop what he was doing. He might have been making a sandwich or whatever. He never even stopped what he was doing because he probably knew where I was going with it. Like, basically, get out of my face with that. I think if you set up a good standard and you have a good program, you can weave certain things into the program that make parents and people associated with it look themselves in the face. And it doesn't, like, I'm not trying to insulate myself like I'm some sort of mafia boss or something where it never gets to you. I don't mind answering questions. But if you create all of the framework, it becomes easier to answer fewer questions. And what I mean by that is a strong coaching staff. At Pacifica Christian, and I'm going to mention him by name, Steve Sohn, who's one of my lead assistant. He also was a business owner, which gives him time, autonomy of his time. So he's able to give a lot to the program. He's my communications guy. All things, all through emails all week. Emails weekly, which is mandated by our school, private. So he handles that stuff. He makes sure that uniforms are dispersed and collected. All of the things that communication has. When we have a tournament, when we have games, they know what this is, and the parents know as well. We also have another piece of communication through our group chat, our team group chat. JV has one for Furtado, who's fantastic as well with communication and being efficient and super organized. So we have a JV varsity group chat. So there's that layer of communication. And then prior to seasons, we did it this year, prior to the summer season, we try to get all the families in there and discuss what we're doing, how we're doing it. And then, in addition to that, we also communicate for the kids who might have aspirations and might be perspectives, what we have in place for them, and also what they should be doing to help their children as well. So we're trying to cover all bases, uniforms, all that stuff. So you got your communication piece. And then from there, you're going to have organized practice. And organized practice holds everyone accountable, coaches all the way down to the players, from what time you're showing up to what's expected to what you should be wearing, right? And then you want to add another piece to that is keep studying the freaking game. Learn the game. It ain't, I tell people all the time, basketball ain't rocket science. You're in a zone, I'm going to swing somebody, overload, hit the middle. You press, we're trying to get the ball up the court. If you got a fantastic guard, they break it by themselves, or you send somebody middle, look opposite. It's not that deep, but just make sure you're learning the game. So if you got some IQ, you got a good communication system going on, and you got solid practices, I think that's another way to answer your question. That's a great way to say, okay, what do you have to ask? It's always about minutes. You know that. You and I, it's always about minutes. Right. And I always say this, and I'll say it to the day I die. You can work on this. You can work on that. We have this in place. We have that in place. This is where they're failing. This is where they're succeeding. Ultimately, if a coach doesn't trust you, they're not going to pay you. They're not going to play you. That's just what it comes down to. So right now, you don't trust my son. I don't trust him in this situation, in that situation, in that situation. So when they're getting minutes, I'm finding ways because I love him. He does the work. So I'm trying to find minutes to help him be more productive and that he's failing in. What else you got, ma'am? Sir, serious. Insulate yourself with being a pro. If you're a pro, they'll come for you. Whether you're terrible or good, they'll come for you. But if you're a pro, it becomes tougher because parents aren't crazy. Yeah, they are. You do have your crazy parents. But for the most part, they're professionals in their realm as well. And they can recognize when things are being done tactfully, efficiently, and constructively. You know what I mean?
Totally. You mentioned so many skills there. You mentioned communication.
Amen.
Preparedness.
Yes, ma'am.
Focused, intentional planning. I think you mentioned even learning, right? These are all skills. Where did you learn this from? Obviously, you mentioned your dad was somebody you really, looked up to and provided you a good foundation. Outside of that, Where did you learn these skills from? Did you have a mentor that helped you along the way? Is it through sport? Is it just through your experience? Where did you pick up the sort of wherewithal to create a program that's sort of not running self-sufficiently, but is set up in a way for people and players to succeed?
I don't think everyone is, but I've always been a inquisitive guy. I'm 45. So we're of the generation where, once again, no trainers. AAU was just coming around the corner for us in high school. No max preps. It was either you do or you don't. You're good or you're not good. And you had to show and prove all the time. It was gladiator. It was a gladiator war. It was Hunger Games, basically. And I was always hungry. I was a kid who was, my brother and I, we would always, we're recording games. I'm recording interviews. I'm recording, ESPN had a show called like Beg, Borrow, and Steal. They had a show called The Life. And all I was searching for was any inkling of how to improve with the game. And now that's just translated to YouTube and social media where I'm always seeking information. I'm just naturally there. I didn't really have a mentor for the coaching. And my father's just a great father. But I was just a naturally inquisitive person. And I recognized that to be the best, you had to keep growing and you had to know more and be better and all of that stuff. So there's a natural inquisitive side of me, but there's also a natural competitor in me. And I also subscribe to the idea of adapt or die. So I'll find the information. If you give me enough time, I'll find it.
I think that's such a skill in itself. I tell people all the time the ability to figure it out is like probably one of the most underrated skills.
Amen.
I remember when I was working for the Lakers and, I was just starting, I was an intern. So, eyes wide open and you're nervous to ask too many questions, and you don't want to make a mistake, but you're then getting tasked with these jobs, things I've never done before. Coding is one of them. And so I'm coding games, right? And, I remember how much I took away from that experience. And I say that to say so much learning comes from trying and doing and having the approach, like the mindfulness approach to actually like wanting and seeking that information.
Yeah.
And I think so many times people can just accept, right? I just don't know. But for me, like if we were somewhere and we were having a conversation about something and I wanted to, know when live period ended, right? And we didn't know, like I would be the person to go on my phone and figure out the answer.
Well, coding, you said coding. I don't know how to code a game. So if you did it for the Lakers, now I'm like, well, when can I try to, when can I kind of like hit her and text her? Maybe she can teach me coding. And if you can't teach me, I'll just go on YouTube and figure it out.
Figure it out.
I'm going to find, because now I know there's something I can't do.
Right.
I have a real desire to know I want to know every aspect of the game at some point.
What's crazy is I interviewed for the New York Liberty, and I made it to the last interview, and one of the questions in the last interview was, about coding. And when I worked in the NBA, part of coding was I already had the actual like code window created for me through the video coordinator.
Okay, so they use certain software.
Correct. It's like Huddle scripts, basically. And so one of the biggest things on the WNBA side was you have to actually create your own code window. And so those were one of the things that, I didn't know how to do. I could code, right? But I told them in the interview, like, but I'll figure it out, right? Yeah. And I did end up getting the job, but still, I remember I paid for Huddle. I reached out to Huddle, paid to get the scripts, and started learning how to do it. And it took me about 6 weeks to figure it out. And I say that to say, like, that's the sort of initiative I think that coaches, people that are really, wanting to figure it out, wanting to seek more opportunity, wanting to just learn, those are the steps that I think are so important, and that we can take on our own to elevate our skills and things that, we know.
Yeah.
And that leads me to asking you, for you, what is the biggest skill that you want your coaches to possess and that you want your players to possess?
I think first, I think what sets me apart or what makes me unique, not better, less, greater, whatever. I think the fact that I've played it, I've coached at all levels, babies, elementary, middle, frosh, JV, varsity, college, and even with one of my semi-pro teams, we didn't have a coach, so I kind of ran everything. So there's the coaching piece. I've also trained. I had a point in my life where I was locked into training and learning about that process and what it looked like. I also was a referee for a while. I was a FIBA referee in my last job. I needed some extra money. They put me through the course, and I made some good money and ended up being a decent official. I'm also a dad. You take all of those different hats, it becomes an aerial view of the game of basketball. It makes you see the game different. And not different, but it makes you see it in different layers. Dad, coach, trainer, teacher, all these different things. And then also, being a company owner. So you get to see it from so many vantage points. I think coaches will be remiss if they did not seek to learn all aspects of the game. I think personally that there's good money to be made as an official. I think there's good money to be made as a coach. I think there's good money as a trainer. I also think there's good money in the front office as an agent, as a physical trainer. So I think almost like music, everybody wants to be the singer or the rapper. Well, what about the guy who's an engineer and he works all year long with multiple people? What about the guy who's the documentarian, but he was a rapper before, but he knows exactly what people want to see, so it makes him a better documentarian? Well, there's some coaches that should probably be referees. There's some referees that should probably be coaches. And there's some coaches that should probably be doing something else. There's some trainers that should probably be coaches. So I just believe wholeheartedly, I would really say that coaches and trainers would be remiss if they didn't learn more about the game. And I'm not just talking about X's and O's and sideline out of bounds and baseline out of bounds and, whether the ball should spin trainer-wise. I remember learning how to get a kid to make the ball spin, when they hesitate. Like, that ball's not spinning. That means that I can tell where you're going. If it's spinning, now you can adjust midair. Stuff like that. That's cool to know, but if you know every aspect or as many aspects of the game as you can, it creates a comprehensiveness, towards your approach, whatever that is. So learn more about the game. And also, I'll cuss a coach out. I'll cuss a referee out too when they need to be cussed out. But why? Because I was a ref. So when I empathize and leave them alone, I'm like, imperfection. But no, my man, you missed that one. You know how I know? Because when you sprinted down the floor, you didn't turn your head fast enough. That means that there was a blind spot. And when we went, in our secondary break, we got that ball to the big on purpose, and you missed that call. So whether he makes a shot or not, you missed it, Mr. Referee, because you didn't turn your head. So stuff like that. Just learn the game. Learn everything about it.
I'm with you on it. I'm with you. So you've coached at every level.
Except the NBA.
Except the NBA.
I would love to do that.
Is that the only thing that you feel like is missing on your resume as far as just experience?
I'm smiling because somebody challenged me the other day. And I finally said it. I do want to. I do want to. I wouldn't mind being a 50-year-old dude figuring out coding to help. I wouldn't mind that at all. I really wouldn't. That's the only thing missing. Just so I can see it at that level. To say I've completed the mission. I've learned everything about the game. Well, not everything. I've seen almost everything. Matter of fact, I did with the Clippers, there was an opportunity that presented itself to be a ball boy for the Ontario Clippers one night. I drove all the way to Ontario just to learn how they do the floors. I had no idea that there was a protocol for that. I didn't know that when they go to the other side of the floor, you got to get up the lane lines to get the sweat. I'm like, this is cool. So here I am, 38 years old. You know what I mean? And then that's how I feel about the game. I love it that much.
Yeah. For the levels you have coached already, which one do you enjoy the most and why?
I want to say playing chess with another coach after the preparation of your strength and conditioning versus ours, your Joes and Johnnies versus ours, your practice plan versus ours. And now your tactics versus ours, and now the players versus yours. I like that chess match, but I can't tell you how gratifying it is to take a kid who knows absolutely nothing about a genre and a sport and be able to teach them basketball, but so basketball, some people do beef or whatever, but to see a kid do toes, knees, elbows, cookies, and to see them go from shooting the ball like this or tossing it this way or this way and being able to get a regular shot up from the floor through the basket, or seeing them finally, after screaming for 2 months, they see two kids run behind them and they're dribbling and they jump stop without traveling, and to see a kid jump stop and pivot, or a kid who never passes jump stops and or see a high school kid, or even like a high school kid at a teaching level who you've been screaming, let the screen open you up. They finally, in the middle of you're watching Synergy or Huddle, and you see it in the game. There's nothing more beautiful than seeing something that someone didn't know be put in practice, which means that you directly impacted the learning and the fun, because when you know better, you do better. And I say it all the time, repetition leads to habit, leads to reflex. And the more you know, what's my other one that I always say? Just a more well-groomed player is a happier player. Smarter player is a happier player. It's like having a new dog. You can't get mad when he pees in the corner. You haven't trained him. You're yelling. You're screaming. They don't know. But there's a gratification behind teaching. So I'll go with being a younger youth instructor. That's more gratifying.
I when I first started, I started really at the obviously I worked for the Lakers first. That was like my first sort of
That was your first gig?
Getting my feet wet.
That's
okay,
crazy.
I'll say this. I was a middle school coach right before, but middle school, I did this in Kentucky, and the middle school season was only 2 months, so I didn't really count that. But my first sort of real experience where it was a full year was with the Lakers.
If I was trying to hire you and you glossed over that story, I would actually nix the Lakers story and tell me about that time when you coached for 2 months with those kids, because that's how I would hire you.
Yeah.
I want to know that. That's crazy.
Yeah. But I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I was thinking about what I was gonna say, and then I got back to it. That's right. So I realized when I started actually coaching at the youth level. Mm-hmm. So I think this was maybe 3 to 4 years into my coaching, right? I started saying, maybe I should explore coaching the middle school level, coaching, some younger kids. And this really kind of took place during COVID, right? When everything was closed and everybody was taking on clients just because, everybody needed the money. And so I was like, let me explore this, because a lot of parents at the time, they still wanted their kids to be active, not sit in the house. They wanted them to do things. And so I actually started realizing how rewarding that is.
Not great.
And I see myself or find myself sometimes in sessions with my older clients, and at times it can feel monotonous, right? Because we're sharpening.
Yes.
And that's not to say I'm not teaching, but a lot of those general fundamentals we're sharpening.
Yeah.
And with the youth level, you're really teaching from the ground up. And I love the challenge of that, right? Because it challenges me to have to explain things in ways that maybe I never have before, in order for a kid with that sort of developmental level to get and apply. Mm-hmm. And, there's something just truly special about that. Even at core, I'm with middle school kids all day, and, all of those kids are probably not going to play professionally, but it is cool when the kids come up to you and ask questions about things that they could improve on or get better at. And then you spend some time focusing on that with them and challenging them with that. And then you see the improvement.
Yeah.
And you're like,
that felt good.
It felt good, right? It makes it all worth it. So I definitely have much more of an appreciation for that than I did when I first started my career. And I guess that helps me understand more of just, why you do what you do and why it's so important to you. Something else that I thought was super cool about just your background and experience is that you have recently become a certified agent. Talk to me about what inspired that and what your goal is with that.
I'll say it on camera for the first time. One of the kids that I originally worked with when I moved to Los Angeles was Trent Mayfield.
Shout out Trent.
Shout out Trent. Trent couldn't walk and breathe at the same time. Couldn't dribble and run at the same time. Just gangly. Just couldn't connect this with his feet. I always say great athletes have great minds and their feet match. Like being a dancer. And he couldn't dance yet. Just couldn't figure it out. 2 left feet, as some people would say. But we grew. I know his father as well. But our relationship grew. And over time, at one point when I was trying, post-playing, I wasn't quite sure of what was going to happen with me with basketball. Was it going to be coaching? Was it going to be skills development and training? Was I going to aspire to be an assistant coach in the NBA? Or was I going to be an agent? I wasn't really sure. And I was open to the fact that I didn't know. So that was one of the things that I wanted to do. But I could never get around to it. Sometimes I couldn't afford it when I was younger. And the opportunity presented itself, but it also presented itself with one of my mentees, I guess, and with Trent. So for all intents and purposes, I'll say it on camera, it was really to connect with him. I really had no intention on truly using it. I just wanted to use the time to connect with him. So if he watches this and he finally watches it, Trent, I went and got my FIBA certification because it was an opportunity to spend X amount of hours and days with you. That was it. I didn't really care about that. I knew that wasn't my calling. That was it.
That's so cool because, Trent, obviously, he was on here a few episodes back.
I watched it last night.
He came on, and even before we got on camera, I mean, just raved about you and about your guys' relationship and how meaningful that's been to him and how impactful that's been, along his journey. And so this is super cool just to hear you sort of echo, the meaning for you along the way. And that's what sports is all about.
Yeah.
That's that at the end of the day, right? Like, we all love the game, but we all love the relationships more. And that's why we keep showing up, and that's why we keep doing what we do. And so to hear a story like that, and just also to see you and him both, when you talk about it, you guys both mutually have so much love and care for one another. That's what coaching actually is. When the ball stops bouncing, it's about the conversations and the connectedness.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I applaud what you're doing as well.
Thank you.
You can tell someone with skill. My wife and I always talk about that. She was an educator for 17 years and really, really good at what she did. Technical, sound, efficient, aggressive, but loving. That's the mother piece of her, the mother part of her, the maternal part. But watching you as well, and I look at your stuff and I look at your, your social media and I look at the way you present yourself, even down to how you're running your business. I'm like, oh, she's groomed and you're a pro. So I appreciate that because you're dealing with people. And no matter how you slice it, when you're dealing with people, you got to handle with care, And I think because of your professionalism, you handle with care. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much for just the kind words, the acknowledgement. For me, I think being sort of a minority in the industry, I know that obviously I'm a woman, obviously
triple minority, right?
Right. I'm short, I'm small, and I also look really young.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew for me the biggest thing was going to be my skills, right? My technical skills on the court, and my willingness off the court to learn. And then also just how I run my business, like trying to be that professional at all times, and also making sure along the way that I'm treating everybody with respect, and genuinely caring for people, because I think no matter what, that goes the longest way.
Very cool.
So thank you for coming on today. I really valued everything that you shared. I enjoyed our conversations. If anybody is interested in learning more about you, following you on social media, where could they find you?
Yeah, Team Hodge Hoops. That's my main page. Even when I do other things on that social medium, it's under the umbrella of Team Hodge Hoops, because hoops is how I got where I got. Just chasing the game. That's how it got me all across the world and into LA eventually. Yeah, you'll find some cool stuff there, some motivational things, some basketball specific things, and I'll share my personality. I do have a marriage pod for those who are married and even care about stuff like that. Marriage for grown folks, and that's on all social mediums minus X/Twitter. So follow me, I follow you back.
Well, thank you so much again for joining, and I'm excited for people to see this episode.
Yeah, this is gonna be dope. This is gonna be dope. Salute, appreciate you.
Thank you.